Welcome everyone to the 22nd Vegan Convergence of the Peoples, Thriving on Planet B. I'm Rebecca Allen and I am honored to introduce to you Dr. Prabodh Mistry. He's a qualified biochemical engineer with a PhD from Imperial College London. His experience covers policy, research, strategy development, and consultancy, and has worked for organizations in China, India, Europe, as well as the United Kingdom, dealing with R&D programs in energy and environment. His talk is the moral imperative given the climate crisis. Welcome, Dr. Mistry.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. So, what I will cover are key elements of science of spirituality, but also related practical actions that we can undertake to achieve or acquire Planet B. So that's what I'm going to cover. I have some 27 slides or so, but I'm going to go through them fairly quickly and leave enough time for questions and answers. I will also share the slide pack with you straight after the presentation. So if you miss anything, you're most welcome to then download the slides and keep them. So that's something I will do, and I will use my laser pointer to point out certain key things. So let's start. Now, my talk is mainly around self-transformation. Something that Sailesh mentioned as Swadharma. So that's what I will focus on. But also, first of all, I also want to thank you, Rebecca, Sailesh, Tammy, and so on for giving this platform and inviting me to speak. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to take the values perspective to talk about the moral imperative. And the prime value that I will focus on is love. Now, love is the most important quality we all possess. And what I want to do is start with a quote from my own teacher of values and spirituality, Sri Satya Sai Baba. And I have actually gained a great deal of insight into spirituality from him. So I want to start with a quote of his. And that says that the individual I believes it is limited, but that is an illusion. It is the same universal spirit imagining itself to be limited. This awareness can come to you either through a flash of intellectual analysis or a flash of universal love. The awareness is an act of identification which requires love. Love is God. Love is the means and end. That is why there are no atheists, for there is no being without love of some kind or other. I won't read the rest of the quote, but it'll be there for you to read later if you like. But as you can see, if you believe in love, you believe in God. That is the key message here. And for all of us, love is the means and end. And as it said, there are no atheists. We're all believers. And we are all embodiments of love. Now, in June 2024, I attended the Climate Reality Conference in Rome. It was in June 2024, and I've taken some slides from there, as well as I've taken some slides from Dr. Sailesh Rao's presentations as well. Something which I will use just to set the scene, but then move on to talking about values. So this slide shows that we are all connected, and how we impact on the environment is clear to see because there is only one overall global environment. When we look up at the sky, it appears limitless. But it is the thin layer of atmosphere that covers the troposphere and stratosphere surrounding the planet that is the new cause of our concern, the climate crisis, as we know it. And it's so thin and so sensitive that we need to address it. Most of us, if not all of us, know Sir David Attenborough. He is a presenter, biologist, and natural historian. And he has recently said that nature once determined how we survive, but now we determine how nature survives. And so I believe that if you are looking to get your teeth into something and make something of your life, then you were born at the right time and right place, because we have things to do. You will have seen this slide too in other contexts, but this represents global surface temperature. And as you can see, it has a basis here, which was around about 1980. And since then, the temperatures have been going up and down, but ever since 1950s and certainly after 1980s, the temperatures have been rising. And you can see that some of the hottest years on record are the recent years. You will have seen this depiction too. And what this shows is the land use data taken from the UN Special Report on Climate Change and Land Use 2019. And the key things to point out are how this is a form of depiction which shows the proportion of land used for different categories of land use. And so there is so much timberland, so much desert, so much plant foods. Plant foods covers very small area, but it provides 85% of our food needs. Animal foods or animal agriculture covers a very large area of land, but provides only 12% of the food we have. If we look at humans' direct food consumption, then clearly the large proportion is already taken care of. But it's the last 15%, the 3% of seafood and 12% that comes from animal agriculture, that is actually causing the climate change that we are talking about. So the challenge of replacing 15% of our food doesn't seem huge, but we are struggling with it. And I think that's why we need to focus on things that I'm going to come on to. What is the moral imperative? I feel that the prime cause of this is the decline of our values that is at the center of exploitation that causes environmental depletion for humans and all life to thrive on this planet. You have already seen in Sailish's presentation previously various forms of depictions where we are showing Earth's planetary boundaries. And as this reference shows, and he also presented just a few minutes earlier, is that 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries have already been exceeded. I won't spend a great deal of time on that because much has been said. So we now know why we should act, and it's clear. But there are also other reasons why we should act. As I said earlier, we couldn't have been born at a better time and place to make something of our life, to lead a life of purpose and meaning. It requires the journey to start from sealing on desires, something I will come on to in the next slide, and it ends in sage or stoicism or sainthood, or what I like to call human excellence. We are all born with inherent inclination towards good and righteousness. And this actually comes from one of the Quranic verses, which is actually depicted in many other religions too, that values are basically inherent in us, and we simply need to bring them out into the open for them to shine. And what I'd like to say is that wherever possible, we should focus more on values-based spirituality than religions. I'm not against religions, but sometimes religions become the point of differentiation and also division. And so this particular depiction really clarifies it. Religions tend to become rather fixed in their ideas, whereas spirituality, values-based spirituality, is something which we can interpret as we have different challenges from time to time. So that's why we should act and how we should act. I said I will say something about sealing on desires. I think this is actually the primary step that we should all consider or will have considered. And it's a practical and spiritual initiative that was started by Sri Sathya Sai Baba in the 1980s. And certainly in the UK, I was one of many who played key parts in actually implementing these through various community centers. It is about cutting waste in energy, food, money, and time, and putting any savings towards helping others. Now, this is actually quite important because serving others is very, very important. In fact, it's the only means by which you can demonstrate selfless love, especially if it is without ego or attachment. And so I wanted to focus partly on that, and I will say something else a little later about this. This is a poster that was designed for Prashanti Nilayam. It's an ashram in India where Sri Sathya Sai Baba used to reside. And as a consultant, I had got together with several other consultants to provide some waste management related consultancy and also implementation of various projects there. And this poster was designed on the back of a poster competition that we had organized in 1995 in the UK. And the depiction, which you will also see behind me, which is where the original is, and here is a copy on this particular slide, it's something that was compiled by an artist called Sarah McNern when we gave her all the winning entries and we said, could you please take out some of the gems of the, from the posters that were entered by the children. And she came up with this beautiful poster, which is what is presented here. Similarly, we could organize Vegan World's poster competition, for instance, or poem competition, or play competition, or public speaking competitions, and saying, again, something I will mention under projects that I will cover later. When dealing with people of other organizations, something that was also alluded to earlier in Q&A earlier, is dealing with people with different views. So when we deal with people of other organizations and views, we need to bear in mind some of these things, which I have taken from this book called The Ideological Brain by Leo Zmigrod. And it says that our brains can absorb a wide range of information to become predictive organs. That's how intuition works. So our brains absorb a great deal of information and become intuitive models, basically. Some brains are attracted to extreme ideologies and doctrines, but we need to avoid those extreme doctrines or rigid ideologies. So we need to avoid these, but work with people who have greater degree of ideological flexibility and greater degree of cognitive flexibility. And the good news is that when working with other groups, there will always be a large section of cognitively flexible people who will be willing to listen, understand, and possibly change. So what we should focus on, as climate healers do, and I know that Sailesh does as well in particular, to present facts, solutions, and pathways towards veganism. And so what this chart depicts is something like 65 to 70% of people you will find in that green zone who will be flexible, who will be able to listen to the arguments and adopt ways. I think the limitation so far may have been that we may not have got to the right number of people to give out the message of our climate crisis on planet A. But something else I also wanted to mention here is that we should be gentle and loving and not be too forceful when giving out the message of veganism. We should remember our own journey to it as well. And mine is fairly recent, 1.5 years, for instance. So, like me, some of you may also be Johnny come lately, and I think we should bear that in mind. Well, our brain acts as an antenna for discerning cosmic reality and spirituality. And there are always two traits that we have to deal with: gross versus subtle, mass versus energy, manifest versus unmanifest. And similarly, these two sides of the brain, which is the rational side and the emotional side. On the left, we have rational side, which is governed by truth. And on the right, we have the emotional side, which is governed by love. And I want to say something about those two core values. These are the two core values, in my opinion, which actually drive our all other values, which manifest as related values, in my opinion. And so I've given these definitions of the two core values. So love, in its purest form, it's unconditional. And it's the foremost quality of human being and essential mark of humanness. It's a universal force that seems to be wired into all living things. Should not depend on what you get back in return. And so this is a definition of love, because we can then categorize different forms of love that we may come across. And this is what this Swadharma model that I will just talk about goes into. Then on the rational side, we have the value of truth. And here I have defined what is absolute truth. That which does not change or ceases to be, is limitless, unconditioned, and unapproachable, and is difficult to comprehend, but science aids the quest for truth. The self-values model has been depicted in these two videos. And I would like my Nikita to actually share these two links on the chat, just so that you have access to them as well. So these two videos are for teachers and research teams. The first one is called The Power of Values, and it's about 6 minutes long, and it talks about how to represent values and analyze values. So it's what teachers have really graphed really well, and they like the approach that I have depicted there. So if you are in teaching or in teaching values or spirituality, do please look at that. The second video is called The Digital Ethics, and it's about 8 minutes long, and it looks at various applications and also goes into how we measure values alignment at 3 levels that we operate at, which are knowledge level, thought level, and action level. And what I have done in this particular video are included elements of Bhagavad Gita in terms of Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga, or knowledge, Bhakti, which is devotion, and action yoga. So do please look at that. I will not be saying much more about this than just in the next 3 slides depict how we use representation of values using, let's say, the value of justice, for instance. So this is not the core value. This value of justice depends on context and also circumstances and also one's own perspective. So justice ideal I have put here. So a law court judge might actually consider values at this particular point where high degree of love and high degree of truth are applied. But if we look at justice from victim's perspective, then the victim may apply a degree of truth, but with a degree of vengeance, perhaps. I'm not saying that they will always, but they could. And so justice might mean different thing to the victim. But what about the perpetrator? Well, the perpetrator will seek sympathy with a degree of perhaps untruth. And so I've placed it here. These are all relative positions that we can actually judge based on what we see. So I'm just showing you how we can represent justice based on our different context. And there is no hard and fast way of presenting this. But when we come to AI technology and sentiment analysis, this is how we can actually differentiate between different contexts of the word applied as justice. Let's look at trust. We trust our mother because we have implicit love and we believe what she says. Our love in God or trust in God may be better or worse, depending on our experience of mother. These are all relative positions, but I think that trust in God may be round about here. Trusting a teacher may be somewhat lesser than mother, because remember, this is the diagonal. The more further away you are in this corner, the better it is. So you can see we trust a teacher, but not as much as the mother. Trust in a bus driver. Well, the trust will only come when we see the bus driver with the right uniform, behind the wheel, with the right attitude, with a great deal of good driving and so on. And then we will begin to have trust in the driver. What about the doctor? Your medical doctor, for instance. Well, again, it's his or her where he is, how the practice is conducted, and so on. So we pick up on lots of visual as well as subtle signals before we begin to trust. What about a salesman or salesperson, I should say? We do have they will have a degree of truth in what they say, but as far as our attitude to the salesperson is concerned, especially if we are being sold something forcefully, then we may trust them, but we may not like them as much. What about trust in politicians? We have often elected them, certainly in democracies, so we may have some regard for them until they start to function and operate as government or as politicians, presidents, prime ministers, or dictators. So I have actually put that with a degree of love, but there may be a degree of untruth there as well. Again, these are indicative positions that shows how the model can be used. And what about a sneaky intruder? Clearly, you wouldn't like them, and they will be working under deception. So certainly we will put them there. Plotting values to understand their meaning. So these are different values that I have depicted. Sympathy. Sympathy is when you're saying, oh, I feel for you. Empathy, on the other hand, is when you try and understand the predicament of the person you're referring to. So it is placed higher up on the truth scale. Pity is, I feel sorry for you, and we're not judging whether the person is right or wrong in what they may or may not have done or their condition, but we feel love towards them. Compassion. Well, this is the highest quality, and it really says that I'm here for you, come what may. Now, this is something I have taken from the second video, which is called the digital ethics. And I would suggest that, that video will probably give you more than what I'm just going to mention here, which is basically that, we have forms of behavior, enlightened selfishness, as Bertrand Russell depicted and showed what it means, or ignorant selfishness, or core selfishness. But we need to, as I said earlier, move towards this particular direction, and that's where spirituality lies. But there are also some gray areas, as I have marked here. Again, I will not go into that other than to say that when steadfast adherence to truth may act against love. And here I've said when white lies might be acceptable provided they're well-intentioned. But we need to be in this particular region. And this is the golden diagonal. And this is the goal, the self-transformation that we were talking about, the swadharma, or our destination, which we can also describe as sage or saintliness is here. But one thing I want to point out are the stages that we may go through in order to get there. So here, it may be one's own parents or mother who will guide them out of the selfishness and towards this enlightened selfishness. Second, maybe teacher. All teachers at school will actually help you to understand the world around you and how to behave. Then comes religions and the texts that may exist. But I have put one's own philosophical inquiry and really guidance from a close teacher as higher than religion, because I think that is where the real development comes from before one is able to acquire that excellence. So this is really about here and now, how to acquire that state, which we call human excellence, rather than hereafter. Now, we all come across AI technology and machine learning a great deal. Machine learning is based on algorithms that learn from data without relying on rules-based programming. But this is not the answer, in my opinion, for the future, because if the data and behavior has been wrong on which you're making the machine learning, then that answer is going to be flawed too. So what I suggest is that future excellence need to be based on values and values-based ethics. We are at a critical juncture in our humanity. ChatGPT, based on past data and experience, cannot make a good guide for the future. So we need to define values-based morality. And this is where the model comes in. So please do look at the two videos if you're interested. But also, if anyone is interested in applying it, this is an open source material. So please feel free to go into that. And it's really about using mathematical programming of ethics to aid decisions. So what does this mean in terms of the imperative for the individual? Self-development is important. So intellectually, we need to gain knowledge by reading, writing, and inquiring, developing our thoughts or mental capacity by meditation, silent sitting, self-inquiry, cognitive flexibility, and so on. We also need to watch our actions. So we need to make sure that they are integrated with values, sealing on desires, self-discipline, and charity. We also need to engage in advocacy. Remember, I'm talking about us as individuals. So engage in advocacy, campaigning, dialogue and debate, projects, something that I'm really focused on in my career as well as in community as well. And I can say so much more about projects that we could undertake. Sacrificing one's own resource to take the vegan world message outwards. And we should not stop giving meaning to our life. So this is the moral imperative for the individual. But what about for the climate healers as a group? Climate Healers is already a unique body, providing thought leadership with evidence, professionalism, and passion, inspires and trains people around the world. And this is where Sailesh and his groups really show a clear leadership, and that is really welcome. I just hope that more and more people come across them. Further suggestions I have are to avoid high dependence on few people and burnout. Because we are fragile human beings, so we need to share the workload. We need to develop young people. We also need to reach out with short-term projects. Again, projects come into my suggestions in different geographical areas. For instance, Sailesh was in London earlier in the month, and our colleague Krishna Gandhi, who will be speaking tomorrow, arranged for Sailesh to go into a number of schools, secondary schools, so speaking to teenagers, and that has had a great outcome. Very positive feedback from the schools that he visited. We also need to consider and support community interest businesses. Again, we can go into that as required. So, veganism, I'm on my last two slides and I will stop. It's basically a journey from planet A as we know it. And we need to design our systems that will work in parallel, as was mentioned earlier. And really, we need to show that we are moving. And when we are really moving, it's a bit like a train. nobody gets on the train unless the train starts to move. And as you can see, this train is definitely moving because everyone is there, hanging on to it to go places. So Planet B is really about acting with love to leave no one behind. Human excellence of few will bring all on board to reach to reach the Planet B. And so this is the moral imperative that I wanted to give. It's love in action, and it's the mindset that we all need to adopt in order to get there. So with that, I will stop the presentation and answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful.
There is a place where all life thrives, where every creature is respected, compassionately saving lives, and no one is rejected. Our world of peace and harmony, we call this planet. There is a place where all life thrives. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. A world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. Oh, a world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. A world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B. There is a place where all life thrives, where every creature is respected, compassionately saving lives, and no one is rejected. Our world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. A world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. Oh, a world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. A world of peace and harmony, we call this Planet B.
Honey, I'm on.
There is a place where all life thrives, where every creature is respected, compassionately saving lives, and no one is rejected. our world of peace and harmony. We call this planet B. This place we know is upside down, a chaos of extremes. In unity we turn it around and live the life of dreams. A world of peace and harmony. We call this planet B. This place we know is upside down.